This is my first, and at this point, only vintage fountain pen. I'll start by talking about how I procured this item. So I actually purchased this on eBay, which is a source that is readily available, and there are a lot of different vintage fountain pens on eBay. But when trying to buy on eBay, it is important to pay very close attention to both the seller and the pen for any sort of defects or things like that. If you want to make sure that you get a top of the line vintage fountain pen in good working condition, then you should buy it from a store that specializes in vintage fountain pens and restores them and makes sure that they're perfectly working, just so that if you think that they're working and you get them, you don't have to spend more money to send them to get them fixed. When I bought this fountain pen, I actually bought it fully knowing and expecting it to be not working when I purchased it, just because the seller that I bought it from had good ratings, but they didn't know much about fountain pens, and they said that it was untested. So whenever they say that it's untested, you can basically assume that it's not working. The reason why I ended up buying this pen regardless of that is because it's just such a beautiful pen, and also they were selling it for a pretty good price. So I was willing to buy this just to kind of get a taste of the vintage fountain pens, and I really wanted to try them out, so I thought this would be a good start into the world of vintage fountain pens. One thing that I really like about vintage fountain pens are the material that it's made out of. This is a celluloid vintage fountain pen, and hopefully the camera can pick it up in this lighting. But the body is just so gorgeous, and the depth of the celluloid is amazing. As you can see, the body is a little bit bent, which doesn't bother me very much. And you can barely even tell when you're writing with it or anything like that. It's barely distinguishable. The celluloid body does have some translucence to it, and also there is an ink window, which I think is a very nice feature of this pen. And there is also an ink cap to keep the nib from drying out as well. So as you can see, this is a lever filler pen, and I made sure that I wanted my first vintage to be a lever filler, just because these are easier to restore generally. So when I got it from eBay, I immediately disassembled it carefully, of course, and found a calcified sack inside. So I just basically cleaned up the entire pen and removed the calcified sack. And to my dismay, the lever filler, actual lever part, as you can see, there's a crack. So this part would need to be replaced. I had bought this pen planning on fully restoring it, but I would need to buy a new part in order to completely restore it, which I'm still planning on doing, and I would love to make a video about it. See, that's why I didn't really want to mess with it, but of course it was in my hand, so I played with it, and it's completely broken. I could feel how fragile it was because of how frail the crack was. So unfortunately, I really just broke it, but it wasn't gonna work either way because the lever is what pushes against the sack to actually fill the pen, the rubber sack. So I've been using this as kind of a dip pen for the time being, but since it does have a feed, I haven't really had many problems with it. The feed holds up so nicely. It will last a couple pages before it actually runs out and I have to redip the pen. It's still been a great pen to use for me, and it doesn't inconvenience me at all. I still really love this pen regardless. Let me talk about the brand a little bit. So as you can see, it's branded University, and University is a subset of the J. Harris & Co. company, which has quite a few different lines. I think another example is their fountain pen brand called Mystique. I might be saying that wrong. I know there's a Y, or I know there's an M. It starts with an M and there's a Y somewhere in there. But that is more of their higher end fountain pens, which actually has a gold nib and just higher quality materials. The University is on the lower end side of that brand. As you can see, it is branded Super Point New York, and you can see that on the nib the plating is wearing off a little bit and the silver is starting to show through, so you can tell that because of that it's not the highest end product. And I also really liked how the breather hole was a diamond. I honestly thought that was just a really nice touch. So you can see the clear ink compartment, which adds a really nice touch. And then as you can see, this is the lever filler, which is also made out of the same metal and plating, I'm assuming. And as you can see, the plating is also wearing off on there as well, which makes sense because that's something that's handled very often. There's also a band which is engraved on the cap, and the plating on that hasn't worn off that much, but as you can see it is loose, but I haven't had any issues with it and it's never seemed like it was gonna fall off to me. The clip is also a little worn, which I don't mind, and it works very nicely still. That's kind of an overview of this pen, but it also comes as a warning. You have to look very closely at the pictures just to make sure that you're getting what you want. I bought this pen as a restoration process and I wanted to try that out, so I bought this pen knowing that there would be some issues. You have to look very carefully at the pen, because what I did not know is that the nib was actually bent when I got this pen. And as you can see, it's still a tiny bit bent. I've tried to bend it back into shape a little bit, very carefully of course, because the last thing that I wanted is to actually ruin the nib. And I've gotten it to the point where I can write with it very smoothly. It's just that I have to write with a very certain angle in order to write correctly. In saying that, let me do a little bit of a writing sample. This is Diamine Autumn Oak, which I almost always pair with this pen because I just find that it works together very nicely. As you can hear, it writes very smoothly when you're holding it at the right angle. I just wanted to be quiet for a second so you could hear. So it writes very pleasant. I didn't have to grind the nib or anything like that. It was just already very smooth, but obviously I have to write kind of at an angle. As you can see, if I try to write it at a different angle, it either won't write or it'll be incredibly scratchy. But because I've found the sweet spot, it really isn't an issue at all. There's no nib size listed. It's about a fine to a medium, a Western fine to a medium. I do quite enjoy it. It's just that if I'm like writing over a camera or something like that, sometimes it is a little bit harder to write in the sweet spot. And that is a little bit of a hassle because you either get a very smooth writing pen or like something horrid. So that is the issue with this pen, but it's not something that I really mind, just because right when I start writing with it, my hands just naturally go to the sweet spot. So it's not a problem that I've experienced. Let me know if you want to see me restore this fountain pen, because I'm going to restore it at some point. And when I restore it, I might also try to fix the nib. I'm just terrified of actually destroying it instead of fixing it, just because I already enjoy how it writes, so I'm worried that in the end I might make it even worse. But yeah, there it is. This is the pen, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave some comments below and I will definitely get back to you. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!